now joined by Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports executive, president, and also consultant to media and much more on 365 Sports. So when you saw yesterday's Sports Business Journal report, were you surprised?
Well, I was surprised to see it on Sunday. That was a little unusual. But, I was a little surprised based on some of Brett's comments last week, where it didn't sound like they were quite as far along as some had believed. And he said that they hadn't really talked about term, but I guess they got through that pretty quickly. And, the numbers, I think, look pretty good. I think might have gotten more if he'd waited. But, to be able to show some stability to the conference members, show a number to, outside parties who might be interested in the Big 12 Conference, I think, those were home runs for him.
Had I asked you back when Texas, Oklahoma, SEC, that story hit in July of 2021, would you have thought the Big 12 would not only expand but also be in a position to have a new agreement?
Well, I don't think I would have said they would have got that number prior to the expansion. I think if you just said, okay, now we're at 18 conference, and you would have gotten nowhere near that. I think you would have been low 20s best. Adding the 4 schools, makes up for Texas and Oklahoma and adds 2 more. So now you're at 12. I mean, that's part of the deal with all of these rights agreements. When you look at the total number, you really have to look at per school, because the total number, it just depends how many schools you've got, what kind of rights are in there. Some schools put in total distributions, or some conferences put in total distributions, including CFP, bowl, NCAA, men's basketball credit, the whole kitchen sink. And what you really need to compare is an apples-to-apples basis. So, basically Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 champ games and men's basketball, college football, et cetera, all in.
You had mentioned you were a little bit surprised on Sunday, and I saw your tweet about the fact you thought perhaps there was a reason behind it. Was it to get ahead of anything that might be coming with the Pac-12, or was it just, let's get this going?
I think it was, let's just get this thing going. And I think, maybe Sports Business Journal had the story, and then at that point, they were probably better off to get it out and control the narrative. Also get it out and control, get it into the Sports Business Journal weekly edition, which is, comes out today. So by coming out yesterday, they were able to get that in the magazine before it went to print. Otherwise, it would have leaked out in bits and pieces and come out over the course of the week, and you kind of lose the ability to control the flow.
What does this suggest, if anything, about the future possibilities of expansion or even future rights with network TV in the Big 12?
Well, I think for future rights, it's it's a good sign. You're able to renew with your incumbents. They're both broad-based networks as well as cable networks. ESPN provides the streaming element, which is important to have these days. And I think for the conference, it's a good sign. I think it's also very smart for them to, you either want to go first, but you don't want to go last. And to go after the Big Ten, let the Big Ten kind of carry the water and set the new rights in 2030. And this one comes up a year later, which is before the SEC and the ACC. And soon, we don't know about whether the Pac-10 or Pac-12 is before them or with them until that deal's done. But I think they position themselves going forward very well.
Is there actually even more value than the television dollars that you're on both ESPN and Fox as far as their exposure or what that brings until you get your next rights done in early 2030s?
Certainly exposure is important, and I think I've mentioned to you guys, be careful about trading dollars for distribution. And, it's unknown yet as to whether or not the Pac-12 is going to do that, but you want to have your product available to as many people as possible in the easiest manner possible. And right now, that's on broadcast and linear cable TV. There's just no other way around it.
Next step, you think, is there another step in growing media revenues for the Big 12, or this is what they are? Do you feel like Brett Yormark might be able to come up with something else?
You're always looking for ways to add value. And so I think that that's something that they're going to have to look into. It's certainly something the ACC is looking into because they're kind of stuck for a few years. So they're definitely looking for new ways to, pump their revenues. And I think every conference is going to have to do that because at some point, you're going to either have to go heavier in on streaming and hope those guys are there with a bigger check than what you may have received in the past. But it's going to be important to find ulterior means to increase your revenues, and you can't just 100% rely on TV rights. But for now, it's a very good source of revenue, and I'm glad that these deals are getting done in a timely manner and at a pretty good dollar amount.
Was this kind of a power move in a way, Brett Yormark, to get this done in a matter of 2 to 3 months?
I think it's like any individual new to a position or a politician new to their position. They're looking to hit a nice solid double in the first 90 days, and I think here he had a nice solid triple. I think could he have gotten more money if he'd waited a little longer? Possibly, but I don't think he left a whole lot on the table, and he ended up with Fox and ESPN, the two preeminent college football outlets, and he's got decent money, and he can show the conference and the new members that there's stability for the next 6 years. And if there's potential others out there, I'm not sure exactly how the additions and subtraction or additions might work if there was expansion. I don't necessarily believe that there's a fixed dollar figure in there for whoever they bring in. It just doesn't ring true to me, but time will tell on that. But I think it was a great deal overall for the conference.
Do you feel like there's still enough on the table for the Pac-12? And obviously, Kliavkoff has made some comments, but do you feel like that there's enough on the table for them to be in a real good competitive area with the Big 12?
I think they're going to be in the neighborhood. I've kind of said all along that the Pac-12 might be 10 to 15% less than the Big 12 unless they can figure out some way to better monetize the content that's on the Pac-12 networks. And if they're able to do that, then they can be right up there with the Big 12. The biggest question will be for the Pac-12 is what's their outlets. I'm not convinced that Fox needs much more college football. They picked up some Big 12 basketball for the first time, which can easily replace the Pac-12 basketball they've carried over the years and would not retain if they don't renew the deal. So they notched off a couple of things, and so I think certainly ESPN's still got to be interested in the Pac-12 for the late windows. And the bigger question becomes, who's the other carrier? Is it a streaming service? Is it another network? And that'll determine, I guess, the total, how good the Pac-12 deal ends up being.
In your opinion, Bob Thompson, with his former Fox Sports president, what's the most significant part of what was released by the Sports Business Journal?
Oh, probably the fact that if, after all is said and done, and people were talking about how the conference is going to take a huge bath because they lost Texas and Oklahoma, the fact that they were able to, increase the deal over the last years of the existing deal, I think is probably the most important thing that was, went forward. They didn't go backwards, even though they lost those two schools, and they picked up 4 good replacements. And so I think that's probably the key takeaway for me.
With ESPN and Fox and what they've agreed to with others, is there a chance that if there's another network for the Pac-12, would it be Turner? Or who do you think it will be, ESPN and then maybe streaming, or could Turner Sports get involved?
That's possible. I really think Turner Sports is, the whole Warner Brothers Discovery merger is still getting kind of sorted out. They've got the NBA deal coming up, and that's very important to Turner. They're still kind of going into year 2 of the NHL. Haven't had a big history with college football in the past, so I'd be surprised if it was Turner. I don't see NBC wanting anything on the West Coast. Saturday Night Live in prime time is, too important. and CBS has always been happy with just a 3:30 Eastern window. So I'm on ESPN and Amazon and or Apple with some level of rights as well for the Pac-12.
Bob, you've been in the middle of this. My last question for you. They have gotten this done, the Big 12. They have been through 3 stretches in their history in the last 12 years. Nebraska and Colorado leave, and the rumors that UT or Oklahoma, the Pac-12, then A&M Missouri leave, and there was rumors, and now just July of last year. How resilient is the Big 12 in somehow surviving?
Very resilient, and I think that's a credit to the institutions and to the fan bases of each of the schools that have remained. If you look at the conference now, I mean, I can't remember a time when there was as much parity in the Big 12 conference. And, I go back to the Southwest Conference and the Big 8. And so these collection of schools they have right now, any given day, someone's going to beat up on the other. And so you've got compelling matchups. It's not Texas OU top heavy anymore. I think going forward, it's got very exciting brand of football. They now have some stability and a good rights deal, and then just keep plugging away at it and trying to grow the revenues in other ways and try to keep up somewhat with those 2 other conferences.
Bob Thompson, former Fox Sports president and consultant on 365 Sports.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine.